The world is falling into chaos, just as it was foretold. My mark is on them all, their fear is my power. Soon every soul will kneel before me. I will make sure I destroy the world and let you all know, that there's no God. The harvest has begun! Rejoice!
This can't be happening!
The rapture chosen are rising!
Help me! I don't want to be left! The beast is here!
The world bows to the beast. Your fear is my power.
No! Let me go! Why are you doing this to me? I didn't get in!
Solomon, born of woman, given breath, mind, and body by the Creator, given 78 years upon the earth. Your time has ended. Your account is now open. You stand at the threshold, the place where every human life is seen exactly as it was, not as it was presented, not as it was argued, as it was.
I know what this place is. I have studied the concept of judgment extensively. I have written about it, argued against it, dismantled the theological framework that supports it publicly for 5 decades. I am prepared for this conversation.
Every soul that arrives here believes it is prepared. None of them are.
50 years, not 1 year of doubt, not 1 morning of wavering, not 1 moment of private weakness where he considered that he might be wrong. Do you understand how rare that is? Most of my subjects give me decades of faithful service, and then crack in the final years. A dying mother, a grandchild being born, a midnight terror that strips away the intellectual architecture, and leaves just a soul, afraid, and reaching for something real. Solomon never cracked. Not once. I am, genuinely, proud of this one.
I did not serve you. I served no one. That was the entire point. I served truth as I understood it. I served intellectual freedom. I served the liberation of human minds from the tyranny of religious systems designed to control.
Yes, that is exactly what I told you it was. Did you really believe, after 50 years, that the argument originated with you?
I developed my own philosophy, my own framework, through decades of study and research and...
Solomon, I have been planting those arguments in human minds since the garden. Every generation, I find the sharpest intellect available, the most gifted communicator, the most credible voice, and I give them the framework. I make it feel like discovery, like enlightenment, like they arrived at the truth that religious people are too afraid to find. I didn't need you to worship me. I needed you to discredit him, and you did it brilliantly for 50 years.
I never told anyone to harm anyone. I never incited violence. I simply argued intellectually against a belief system I found to be false.
At age 28, Solomon published his first book arguing against the existence of God. It sold 400,000 copies. 3 people who read it who were on the edge of faith turned away permanently. At age 34, Solomon debated a pastor on national television. The pastor's congregation watched. 17 members left the church within the following month, citing Solomon's arguments. At age 41, Solomon's curriculum was adopted in 12 universities. It was the primary philosophical framework that shaped the worldview of over 40,000 students across 2 decades of teaching.
I believed what I taught. I was not deceiving anyone. I genuinely.
Romans 1:18, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Suppress the truth, Solomon, not invent a new one, not discover an alternative. Suppress what was already there, already written, already spoken into every human conscience by the God who made it. Romans 1 verse 19 to 20. What may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse.
Without excuse. He says it quietly, as though tasting a phrase he spent 50 years arguing against. I always said that verse was circular reasoning, that it assumed the conclusion that a God who hides himself and then judges people for not finding him is morally incoherent.
And yet you found him repeatedly throughout your life, and chose each time to construct an argument against what you had encountered. The scroll does not lie, Solomon. Shall I show you the moment? Solomon, age 19. 3 weeks before publishing his first anti-religious essay, he stood under the sky for 47 minutes. He did not move. He did not speak. He felt for the first time in his adult life something that his entire academic framework could not name. Something vast, something personal, something that seemed to him in that moment like it was looking back.
I remember that night. I had just finished the first draft of the essay. I went outside to clear my head. Something happened under that sky that I spent the next 6 months writing myself out of.
I gave you Kant. I gave you Nietzsche. I gave you 3 new books that arrived the following week that reframed what you felt as a psychological response to vastness rather than an encounter with a personal God. By the time you were done reading, what happened under that sky had been reclassified as an emotional reaction.
I did that. I reclassified it myself. Nobody forced me to.
I gave you the tools. You did the work. That has always been our arrangement, even when you didn't know it was an arrangement.
Solomon, age 31, his mother's funeral. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me.
She believed. She prayed every day of her life. She left a Bible on my childhood bed every time. I came home with a new verse underlined, even after my books came out, even after I had publicly argued against everything she believed. She never argued back. She just kept underlining verses and leaving the Bible on my bed. I took the Bible home. I kept it. For 40 years, I kept it. I told myself it was sentiment, that it had no intellectual value, that I kept it only because it was hers.
Oh, where is it now?
On my desk. I moved it to my desk 3 years ago. I told myself I was going to write a critique of the marginalia, of her notes in the margins. I never wrote the critique. I just kept it on the desk. And sometimes in the mornings before anyone else was awake, I would open it to the verses she had underlined. I never told anyone that.
That Bible was my greatest ongoing threat for 40 years. Every time he opened it, every time he read one of her underlined verses, something moved in him that my arguments had to work overtime to suppress. I kept him busy. Books to write, debates to win, conferences to attend, students to teach. I kept the noise level high enough that the mornings with that Bible never lasted long, enough to do what they were trying to do.
50 years of Antichrist practice, Solomon. 50 years of publicly dismantling the faith of others. 50 years of giving the enemy your intellect, your platform, your voice, and your influence to push souls away from the God who made them. And underneath all 50 years, a Bible on a desk, a memory of a sky full of stars, a hospital room at 3 in the morning where something was 47 minutes from breaking through. Hebrews 4:13. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of Him to whom we must give account. Everything is laid bare here, Solomon, including what you felt under the sky, including what happened at 3 in the morning, including every moment. God reached through 50 years of constructed argument and touched something in you that the argument could never fully silence. The judge has seen all of it, every published word, and every unpublished amen.
Solomon.
Yes, I am here.
I know. I have always known where you were. Even when you were certain I did not exist, I knew exactly where you were. Every lecture hall, every publishing house, every university corridor where you dismantled another young mind's faith with the precision of a man who had practiced the argument until it felt like truth. I was in every one of those rooms, Solomon, watching, grieving, and still pursuing.
I told myself for 50 years that pursuit was a religious projection, that the sense of being, known being, watched being, followed by something personal was a psychological construct, a comfort mechanism evolved by a species afraid of its own mortality. I wrote an entire chapter about it, chapter 7 of my 3rd book, The Illusion of the Pursuing God. It was the chapter my publishers said was the most powerful thing I had ever written.
Every word, and underneath every word, I could hear what was actually being written. not a refutation of my existence, a defense against it. There is a difference, Solomon. A man who does not believe something does not spend 50 years arguing against it with that much feeling.
I was afraid of you, not in the early years. In the early years, I genuinely believed the argument. But somewhere around year 20, I began to sense that the argument was doing something for me that had nothing to do with intellectual truth. It was keeping something at a distance, something I could not name, and therefore could not control. And I have spent my entire life needing to control what I could not name.
Solomon,
Lord, I am here.
I heard you 11 days ago at dawn at your desk with your mother's Bible open to John chapter 1. I heard every word you said.
Was it enough? Was 11 days after 50 years, was it?
Luke 23:42-43. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. A thief on a cross, with hours remaining, with no opportunity to make restitution, with no time to undo the damage of a lifetime, with nothing to offer except the words, remember me. I said today, not after you have paid for the years, not when you have earned sufficient standing, not if the balance of your life merits consideration. Today.
But the people I pulled away from faith, the books, the students, the damage, 50 years of damage,
is real. Every consequence is real. I do not minimize it. The millstone verse was not spoken lightly. The weight of what you did with the gifts I gave you against the kingdom I called you to build is not a small accounting. But hear me clearly, Solomon. Romans 5:20, where sin increased, grace increased all the more, not as permission, as power. Grace is not a ceiling that sign can exceed. Grace is not a budget that runs out when the debt becomes too large. Grace is the nature of a God who sent his Son into the worst of human darkness and called it love, not foolishness.
50 years against you, 11 days toward you, in your economy, in your justice. How does that resolve?
Micah 7:18. Who is a God like you, who pardons sin and forgives the transgression of the remnant of his inheritance? You do not stay angry forever, but delight to show mercy. I delight in it, Solomon, not reluctantly, but after sufficient time has passed, not as a concession to the argument you finally stopped making. I delight genuinely in mercy extended to the soul that finally, however late, however broken, however weighted with the evidence of 50 years, turns. Ezekiel 18:21-22. If a wicked person turns away from all the sins they have committed and keeps all my decrees and does what is just and right, that person will surely live. None of the offenses they have committed will be remembered against them, none of them remembered against them, not minimized, not balanced against credits, not remembered.
50 years not remembered against me.
Because of what covered them, not your 11 days. Your 11 days were the door opening. What covered the 50 years was the blood of my Son, which is the only currency this court has ever accepted for the debt of a human soul. Ephesians 1-7. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace.
I spent 50 years arguing that this was not real, and you gave it to me anyway.
I know that is what grace means. Welcome home, Solomon. 50 years late. 11 days of courage, and a dead woman's underlined Bible that I made sure stayed on your desk until you were ready to read it as a son instead of a scholar.
This record is closed. But hear this clearly. Not every story ends in 11 days. Not every soul gets a terminal diagnosis and 6 weeks of recovery and a mother's Bible and a student who answers the phone at midnight and a God who keeps every door open until the last possible breath. Everyone. Not the already religious, not the philosophically compatible, not the ones whose rebellion lasted a respectable number of years. Everyone. The 50-year Antichrist practitioner reading John 3:16 at 3 in the morning. The teenager who walked away from faith last week. The academic who built a career on the wrong argument. The ordinary person who simply never got around to opening the door. Everyone who comes is received. That is not a doctrine I am presenting for debate. That is the nature of the God who designed this place, who sent His Son into the world and who keeps the door open longer than any of us deserve.